first sound you hear is the crackle of frost pressing against the felt walls of the tent. It is not like rain on canvas or wind against wood. It is the whisper of air so cold that it grinds against the fabric, a faint creak as if the night itself is testing whether your shelter will hold. The second sound is closer, the slow, muffled breathing of the reindeer tethered outside, their bodies steaming in the black dawn, their nostrils hissing little bursts of white. And then, the third sound, the one you depend on most, the pop of embers stirring inside the iron stove at the center of the tent. Before you drift off, do me a small favor and tap the like button and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment telling me where you are listening from and what time it is for you. You lie beneath heavy reindeer hides, wrapped tightly, your face half covered, your breath already stiffening the scarf tied across your mouth. For a moment, you do not want to move. The air inside the tent is sharp and metallic, cutting into your nostrils even though you have not yet left the bedding. The stove's glow is faint, barely enough to push back the night. Every muscle in your body begs you to remain still, to remain buried in warmth, to ignore the cold pressing so insistently against the walls. But in Yakutia, in the tundra at -71 degrees, there is no room for lingering. The first person up is always the one who tends the stove. A hand reaches out from the bedding, fingers stiff as bone even inside mittens, fumbling for the log stacked nearby. The stove door groans open, a burst of bitter air rushing in, the embers flaring faintly. Waiting, wood is shoved in quickly, sparks rising, smoke twisting up through the pipe that pierces the felt roof. The smell of smoke thickens, the hiss of sap bursting in the log joins the silence. Slowly, reluctantly, the stove begins to breathe again. The family stirs. Children rub at eyes crusted with frost, their breath hanging above them like fog. Women pull scarves tighter around their heads, even before crawling from under the hides, their movements careful, deliberate, because to expose too much skin, even for a few seconds, is to risk it turning white with frostbite. Men sit heavier, shoulders bent, already thinking of the herd waiting outside, already calculating how many logs will be needed for today, how many hours they will spend chopping before the stove can rest again. The inside of the tent is alive now. Steam rises from the kettle set atop the stove. Ice slabs hacked last evening now softening, melting, dripping into water. The children hold their hands over it, palms tingling in the rising warmth, their cheeks glowing faintly orange in the firelight. Their laughter is quiet, but it cuts through the silence like a knife. Even here, even in the coldest place on earth, laughter still belongs. A mother ladles water into a basin, steam curling upward, the scent of smoke still clinging to it. Hands are washed quickly, faces wiped with cloths warmed by the stove. Soap is brittle, hard as stone, softened near the flame until it can lather. The basin cools almost instantly, the water losing its fight against the air, so the ritual must be hurried. Cleanliness is not luxury here. It is a race against time, another act of survival. Outside, the reindeer shift, hooves crunching against snow that squeaks like glass. Their bells jingle faintly, muffled by frost, their bodies steaming in the dark. Men step into boots, still stiff from yesterday, tug mittens onto hands already raw, pull on fur hoods so thick they vanish inside them. When they open the flap of the tent, the air charges in, fierce and merciless, filling the space with a sudden bite. Scarves freeze to mouths, eyelashes stiffen into white needles, breath becomes smoke that does not fade but drifts downward like dust. The herd must be checked. The cold does not care if it is morning. Back inside, the stove is fed again. Tea leaves are dropped into the kettle, their scent sharp, bitter but comforting. Children sip slowly, their lips red, the steam curling over their faces. A piece of frozen fish is cut into thin strips, each one snapping like glass under the knife, passed to small hands that crunch them down like fruit. Breakfast is not feast, it is fuel. Fuel for walking through drifts, fuel for chopping frozen wood, fuel for surviving another day that will press harder than the last. The morning in the tundra is not gentle. It does not rise with birdsong or warm light. It arrives as a test, an announcement that the night has passed and now it is your turn to fight again. You pull on layers, you stoke the fire, you feed the herd, you eat what will give strength, and you step into the silence that waits beyond the tent. This is the morning routine in the coldest land a human can inhabit, not a ritual of choice, but of necessity. Each step, each sip, each breath is another bargain with the frost. And already, before the sun has truly risen, you are deep in the work of surviving. The stove hisses steadily, smoke curling through the pipe, but one need presses harder than the rest. Fire can warm the tent, hides can shield the body, but without water, the day cannot begin. In the tundra at -71 degrees, water does not flow. It does not pour from taps or bubble in streams. It is locked inside ice, inside snow, buried beneath layers of silence, so deep that even rivers stop moving. To drink here, you must carve liquid out of stone. A man shoulders his axe, his boots crunching against snow as he steps outside. The cold meets him instantly, a force so heavy it feels alive, clawing into his chest with each breath. His scarf freezes to his mouth. In seconds, lashes stiffen into brittle white combs, mittens grow hard as boards. The dogs stir faintly, lifting their heads from the snow, watching as he drags a sled toward the river. The reindeer snort in the distance, steam rising from their nostrils, their bodies already coated in frost that clings to every hair. The village is silent except for the squeak of boots and the low groan of wood under strain. At the riverbank, the ice gleams blue and green in the pale light, thick as stone, layered with years of frozen memory. An axe strikes it, ringing like a bell, shards scattering across the snow in glassy splinters. Again and again the axe falls, until the first crack spreads outward, a white vein running deep. Another blow, and a slab breaks free, massive and heavy, hauled onto the sled with a grunt. Each block is treasure. Each block is survival. Without them, there is no tea, no broth, no life. Block by block, the sled fills. The man's face is masked in frost, his beard a white crust, his breath rising in bursts that hang heavy in the still air. He works quickly, because the cold punishes even the strongest. His mittens stiffen, his legs ache, his lungs burn. The river gives what it must, and he takes it, hauling it back toward the tent, boots squeaking, sled groaning. Inside the tent, the slabs are hacked into smaller chunks, kettles filled, stoves fed with more wood until flames roar. The ice hisses as it meets the iron, droplets forming, steam rising. Slowly, painfully slowly, water is born again. Children crowd near, watching eagerly, dipping fingers into the first warm trickles, laughing as they lick them clean. Mothers ladle it into cups, dropping in tea leaves, pouring into bowls where porridge will soon thicken. Snow can be melted too, but it takes more wood, more fire, more energy than anyone can spare. Ice is the true currency here, carved from rivers, stacked outside in great blocks, covered in frost so thick it looks like marble. Stored this way, it lasts, ready to be fed into kettles day after day. Laundry depends on it too. A basin is filled, clothes dropped in, soap softened by fire until it can lather. Hands plunge quickly, scrubbing, fingers red from the heat of water that cools too fast. The garments stiffen almost instantly once pulled free, frozen into shapes that stand on their own. They are draped near the stove to thaw, the air filling with the smell of smoke and wet wool. Even washing faces is a ritual. Cloths dipped into hot water, wrung out, pressed against skin, steam curling upward. For a few moments it feels like luxury, warmth against cheeks, against closed eyes. But the cloth cools almost instantly, the comfort stolen as quickly as it came. Baths are rare, precious, entire barrels of ice melted over hours, steam rising thick in makeshift tents. You sip from a wooden cup, the tea bitter, smoky, tasting faintly of iron from the kettle, and clean like the river itself. It is not just water, it is proof. Proof that even in a land where everything is locked in silence, you can still coax life out of the earth. Each drop carries with it the echo of axe strikes, the groan of sled runners, the hiss of ice meeting fire. Here, water is not given, it is earned, and with every sip, you remember that survival is always carved from the unyielding. Before the day's labour begins in earnest, before the herd is tended, before wood is chopped, or food prepared, there is a battle that must be fought at the threshold of the tent. The battle of clothing. At -71 degrees, the air itself is a predator. Skin exposed for even a few minutes stiffens, burns, turns pale, and dies. Here dressing is not vanity, not style, not even comfort. Dressing is war. The ritual begins with the feet. Wool socks are pulled high, sometimes 2 or 3 pairs at once, the fibres rough against skin but trusted, faithful. Over them go felt boots, stiff and heavy, thick soles built to block the murderous cold rising from the frozen ground, but felt alone is not always enough. The true armour is reindeer hide, boots sewn by hand, soles layered with fur, stitched with tendon so strong it can endure years of frost. These boots are sacred tools, crafted by mothers and grandmothers, decorated with patterns of lines and stars, each stitch a prayer against frostbite. Slip your feet inside, and you feel the warmth close in like another skin, wrapping you in the strength of the herd. Next are the legs. Woolen trousers go first, quilted and patched, so thick they crinkle when bent. Over them are pulled fur leggings, the hides of reindeer stitched into panels, tied at the waist with cords. They are clumsy, heavy, but they do not fail. A man in such pants can kneel in snow for hours and rise again, with his legs still alive. Without them the cold would creep upward from the ground, stealing warmth inch by inch until bone itself ached. The torso is layered more carefully still. A shirt of linen, then a heavy wool tunic, then another over that, then a vest padded with down or stuffed with felt. Over it all comes the coat, long sweeping fur turned inward for warmth, leather facing outward to resist wind. It hangs nearly to the knees, sometimes lower, its weight a burden and a blessing both. The shoulders sag beneath it, but no one complains. A coat is a fortress. To wear one is to carry your home with you into the tundra. Hands are next, and they are always the first to betray you. Fingers cannot be trusted here. Gloves separate them, and the cold finds its way in too quickly, so mittens are chosen instead. Thick sacks of fur, clumsy but certain. Inside them the fingers share heat, huddled together, safe. You cannot write in them, cannot sew, cannot thread a needle, but you can grip an axe, you can haul a sled, you can hold reins, and those are the only tasks that matter out here. Children wear mittens tied to cords around their necks, so they can never lose them in snow, because a mitten dropped is a hand lost. Then comes the face. A wool cap first, pulled low to cover the ears. Then a fur hat, sometimes fox, sometimes sable, sometimes rabbit. The warmth of the animal wrapped tight around the skull. Scarves are wound again and again around the lower face, until the mouth and nose vanish behind layers of wool. The air filters through them, stiffening the fabric into a frozen mask. It ices over within minutes, crusting into a board, but still it protects. Eyelashes freeze regardless, clumping together with white needles until blinking becomes difficult. Every child learns early to brush ice gently from their lashes before it seals their eyes shut. Finally, every seam is checked, belts tightened, scarves tucked, mittens tied, boots secured. A father runs his hand across his child's shoulders, tugging at cords, pulling scarves higher, sealing every gap. A mother checks her husband's hood, tugging the fur forward so wind cannot strike his cheeks. These are not gestures of affection. They are acts of protection, as vital as feeding, as necessary as breathing. And then, only then, the family steps outside. They are no longer dressed as people, but armoured like soldiers. Their steps are heavy, their movements slow, but they are safe. The cold presses in immediately, searching for weaknesses, but finds none. The boots hold, the coats hold, the mittens hold. Breath bursts in white plumes. Scarves stiffen, lashes whiten, and yet they move forward, carrying their lives upon their shoulders, carrying the warmth of their reindeer herds stitched into every seam. In Yakutia's tundra, at 71 degrees below freezing, reindeer are more than beasts. They are the source of every step, every stitch, every breath. Without their hides, the cold would strip men and women bare in minutes. Without their fur, no child would laugh on the way to school. No hunter would return from the forest. Dressing here is not simply putting on clothes. It is donning the life of the reindeer itself. It is becoming part of the herd, part of the ancient pact between man and beast, woven together against the frost. And as you walk out into the snow, heavy and slow, your scarf stiff, your mittens clumsy, your coat dragging at your shoulders, you realize something profound. You are not dressed to be human. You are dressed to be something more enduring, something the cold cannot break. The tent rises from the tundra like a dark pyramid, its frame of poles lashed together, its skin of reindeer hide stitched into heavy panels. To an outsider, it looks fragile, a simple hut dropped into the endless white. But this is the Chum, the home of the Nomads, the fortress of the tundra, the heart that must burn day and night if life is to continue. In a land where the air itself kills, walls are not walls, they are shields, and every stitch, every pole, every layer is measured against the cold's unending assault. The building begins with reindeer. Without their hides there is no home. Each panel of felt is thick, compressed from wool and skin, softened by smoke and stitched by careful hands. The hides are overlapped to block the wind, layered until they form a barrier that bends rather than breaks. The poles, long, straight, stripped of bark, are carried across snow on sleds, lashed together at the top like ribs, spread wide at the base. Once the hides are stretched across them, the structure is lifted into place, a cone against the horizon, the smoke hole at the top left open to breathe. Inside, the air is dim, smoky, heavy with the scent of hides, wool, and fire. At the center stands the stove, blackened from years of flame, its pipe piercing the roof, its belly always hungry. Around it the floor is covered with layers of skins, thick and soft, cushioning against the frozen ground. Quilts, furs, and clothes are piled neatly, though in truth nothing stays clean here. Smoke seeps into everything, clinging to hair, to hides, to breath itself. But no one complains. Smoke is life. It means the fire is burning. It means the cold is still held at bay. Feeding that stove is the family's most important task. Logs are stacked nearby, chopped and hauled endlessly, because a fire left to die is a death sentence. The stove is never allowed to cool. Even in the deepest night, someone rises to place another log inside, to poke the embers, to coax flame back into being. It is a duty rotated silently, a rhythm as constant as the beat of a heart. Children grow up hearing it, the scrape of iron, the hiss of wood catching fire, the sigh of smoke. To them it is as natural as a lullaby. But wood alone is not enough. Dung is gathered from the reindeer, dried into bricks, stacked beside the tent. It burns slower, steadier, lasting longer than a single log, and it keeps the stove fed when the forest lies too far away. The smell is sharp, acrid, but it is the smell of warmth, the smell of life. Families joke about it, but none despise it. Without it, the stove would falter, the hides would stiffen, the air inside would freeze. Every part of the chum is designed for this constant war. The smoke hole at the top is adjusted with cloth, open to let smoke out, closed to trap heat. Quilts are hung along the walls, extra hides draped over gaps, every seam checked with hands to be sure no draft slides through. Even so, frost creeps in. It paints the poles white. It crawls across hides. It forms lace across the roof where warmth meets air. At dawn you wake to find your own breath frozen in your hair, your scarf stiff, your pillow rimmed with ice. And yet, for all this, the tent is a haven. Inside, you can strip off a layer, stretch your arms, feel your fingers again. Children laugh and play, their cheeks red but their voices bright. Mothers sew, needles flashing in the firelight, their thread pulled tight through hides that will become boots and mittens. Fathers repair harnesses, their hands clumsy in mittens, but patient, around the stove. Tea boils, broth simmers, smoke curls, life continues, fragile but fierce. Step outside, and you see it from a distance, a cone of hides standing alone in the white expanse, smoke twisting into the endless sky. To the eye of the unknowing, it is simple, primitive, temporary. To those who live within, it is everything. It is warmth. It is protection. It is survival woven into poles and skins, stitched together with centuries of memory. The cold presses on the walls, all day, all night, never relenting. But inside the chum, the fire answers, the felt answers, the people answer. And for one more night, one more dawn, the balance holds. The stove inside the tent growls hungrily, flames licking at the logs, smoke hissing upward through the pipe. It is a living creature, demanding, insatiable, consuming everything you feed it. A single log burns to embers too quickly, another must follow, and then another. In the cold village of Oymyakon, or here in the Tundra where nomads pitch their chum, the fire is not a comfort, it is a tyrant, and to keep it alive, the forest must be conquered daily. Men pull on their heavy fur coats, mittens stiff with frost, boots that crunch against the snow with every step. An axe is slung over one shoulder, the blade already shining with ice. A sled is pulled behind, its ropes cutting into mittens, its runners squealing faintly on the brittle snow. The air gnaws instantly, breath freezing in beards, eyelashes fusing into white needles. The forest looms in the distance, trees standing like blackened spears against the endless white, their trunks armoured in frost. The first strike rings out like a gunshot, steel against frozen wood. Chips fly upward sharp and bright, scattering like glass shards. Each blow reverberates through the arms, shoulders, chest, shaking the body. Frozen wood is harder than stone, stubborn, unwilling to yield, but the axe rises and falls again and again, until the bark splits, until the trunk groans and leans, until it collapses with a crash that echoes through the silent forest. Snow bursts upward as it lands, a plume of powder drifting slowly back down. Then the work begins in earnest. Limbs are hacked free, logs split into halves, then quarters. The sound fills the trees. Crack, thump, the rhythm of survival. Horses stand steaming nearby, their breath rising in clouds, their coats glittering with frost. They stamp their hooves, shake their manes, wait patiently as sleds are loaded. Each log is heaved onto the pile, each one a future hour of warmth, each one another night staved off. The sled grows heavy, groaning against the snow as it is dragged back toward the tent. Children join in where they can, their mittens clumsy on smaller axes, their laughter sharp in the frozen air. They drag branches, gather kindling, stumble through drifts, cheeks raw and eyes bright. For them the work is not yet a burden but a game, though they already know what is at stake. They have seen mornings when the fire faltered, when the stove froze, when quilts were rimmed with frost and breath, hung like smoke in the air. They know wood is life. Back at the chum, the logs are stacked high, walls of wood rising beside the tent. Each family keeps piles that look like fortresses, tall and broad, a visible measure of how many days stand between them and danger. Women break branches into smaller pieces, kindling for mornings when the fire must be coaxed from embers. Children drag splinters inside, stacking them neatly near the stove. The rhythm never stops. Firewood is burned as quickly as it is gathered, the piles shrinking and growing like the breath of the village itself. And always, the cold presses back. Logs freeze solid, their surfaces cracking with the sound of splitting glass. Axes shatter if struck carelessly, the metal brittle in air this sharp. Mittens stiffen, shoulders ache, sweat pricks beneath the layers, and sweat is dangerous. Damp clothes freeze in minutes. So men pace their swings carefully, steady but relentless, never allowing moisture to betray them. When the work is done for the day, sleds empty, wood stacked, horses unhitched and led back steaming, there is no celebration, only the satisfaction of another day's debt paid. The stove will breathe tonight, the tent will glow, the family will sleep with warmth pressing against their quilts. Tomorrow, the cycle begins again. In Oymyakon, in the tundra, there is no such thing as enough firewood. There is only today's pile and tomorrow's hunger. The cold never stops asking, and the axe never stops answering. Inside the tent, the stove breathes steadily, its pipe glowing faintly red in the dim light, smoke curling upward into the black. Around it, the family gathers for a task that is both ordinary and sacred, cooking blood sausage, a dish born from necessity, yet carried with pride through generations. It is not prepared for taste alone. Though it is rich and filling, it is prepared because here in the tundra, at -71 degrees, nothing is wasted. Every part of the reindeer sustains life. The women work first, their hands wrapped in mittens, even indoors, their motions practiced and efficient. A bucket of fresh blood, still warm from the morning's slaughter, is stirred with careful rhythm, steam curling faintly from its surface. The smell is sharp, metallic, filling the tent, mixing with the ever-present smoke. Into it is folded fat, sliced into small cubes, thick and yellow with richness. The mixture thickens, darkens, grows heavy. It is poured through funnels into intestines that have been scrubbed, stretched, prepared for this moment. The casings glisten, pale and fragile in the firelight, but they swell as they fill, becoming plump ropes of crimson and gold. Children watch wide-eyed, their cheeks flushed from the heat of the stove, their hands reaching to touch but always pulled back by stern voices. They know this is important work. They know the sausage will fill their bellies tonight, will coat their throats with warmth, will push back the cold gnawing at their ribs. Already their mouths water at the smell, though it is raw, though it is not yet cooked. They are used to waiting, but still they watch, eager. The sausages are tied, twisted into lengths, coiled into bowls. Then they are dropped carefully into a pot of boiling water set on the stove. The liquid hissing as it accepts them. Steam bursts upward, thick and rich, carrying the scent of blood, fat and smoke throughout the tent. The pot rattles as it boils, the sausages shifting within, swelling, turning darker as they cook. The sound fills the space, a bubbling, hissing chorus that joins the crackle of fire. Minutes pass, then hours. The family stirs the pot, lifts the lid, checks the sausages, presses them gently with spoons. The smell deepens, fills the lungs, clings to hair and clothes. Outside, the cold gnaws against the felt walls, frost creeping inward, but inside, the air is heavy with food. Hunger sharpens with every breath. When at last the sausages are lifted out, steaming, dripping, laid across wooden boards, silence falls. Knives flash, slices are cut, pieces handed out. Children are served first, their small hands clutching the warm food, their mouths opening eagerly. The taste is dense, heavy, iron-rich. The fat melts on the tongue, the casing bursts softly, the warmth spreads instantly through the chest. For a moment it is as if the cold itself has been beaten back, driven away by a tide of strength. Adults eat slower, chewing with purpose, savouring the weight of it, knowing what it means. This food is not only nourishment, it is respect. It honours the reindeer that gave its life, ensures that nothing was wasted, transforms blood and fat into strength that will carry the family another day. Each bite is survival. Each slice a shield against frostbite, exhaustion, hunger. After the meal, scraps are given to dogs, their eyes gleaming in the firelight, their bodies stiff with frost. They eat quickly, growling softly, tails wagging faintly. They too must endure, and they too are fed. Bones are set aside for tools, fat rendered further for lamps. Nothing is lost. Nothing is left behind. The tent is quiet now. Only the sound of chewing, the hiss of the stove, the sighs of full bellies. The children lick their fingers, their faces glowing, their laughter bubbling up again. Adults lean back, their shoulders heavy, but their spirits lighter. Outside, the tundra waits with its silence and its frost. But for now, within the circle of fire and smoke, there is warmth. Cooking blood sausage is not simply a meal, it is an act of defiance. It is the transformation of what should be hardship into sustenance, of what should be waste into life. It is the proof that in the coldest land on earth, where even rivers freeze and the sky burns with green fire, people still eat, still share, still live. The herd breathes in the darkness like a living cloud, steam rising from 100 bodies, drifting into the black air, freezing into mist that settles again as frost on the animals' hides. Reindeer stand close together, their heads bent, their muzzles buried in snow as they paw with sharp hooves to uncover frozen moss. Their bells jingle faintly, a delicate sound carried across the tundra like whispers of glass. To the nomads of Yakutia, this is not simply livestock, this is life itself. Without the reindeer, there would be no food, no clothing, no transport, no home. At first light, the herders step out of the chum, scarves already stiff, mittens clumsy but certain, their eyes narrowed against the slicing wind. They check the herd, moving slowly among the animals, calling out low songs, their voices muffled but steady. The reindeer recognize these sounds. They turn their antlered heads, their dark eyes glinting, their breath bursting white into the cold. The bond between man and herd is older than memory, built from centuries of mutual survival. The first task is always counting. Each reindeer is known, each one noted. Missing animals are tracked, their prints traced through snow, their bells listened for in the stillness. Wolves prowl these lands, lean and hungry, their paws silent, their eyes burning. A reindeer that strays too far risks never returning, and so the herders walk, search, listen, their boots squeaking in the snow, their scarves freezing to their lips. The animals are hardy, far hardier than cattle or horses, but they too must be tended. Herders check hooves for cracks, antlers for injuries, hides for frostbitten patches. Calves are watched closely, their bodies small, their legs spindly, yet they too must endure the air that could kill a man in minutes. Mothers nuzzle them, their breaths mingling, their warmth shared, and the herders wrap them in extra hides if they weaken, tying them close to the stove inside the chum until they recover. Wounds are treated with what the tundra gives. Fat is pressed into cuts, soot rubbed into frostbitten patches, herbs gathered in brief summers boiled into poultices. Nothing is wasted, nothing ignored. The reindeer are too valuable, too sacred to risk losing. Every hide means boots, every antler a tool, every stomach lining a container, every scrap of meat survival. But to the nomads, the herd is more than resource, it is kin. They speak to them, sing to them, stroke their necks with mittened hands. To harm one without reason is unthinkable. When slaughter must come, it is done quickly, with prayers whispered, offerings made to the land. The reindeer give transport too. Harnesses are strapped around their chests, sleds tied behind, runners creaking against snow. The animals stamp, snort, then surge forward, their hooves kicking up powder, their breath streaming behind them. Families ride bundled on sleds, children pressed close to mothers, men standing at the reins, their faces crusted with frost. The sleds fly across the tundra, swift and silent, gliding over drifts where no car could ever pass, no machine could endure. It is the reindeer who open the tundra, who carry people across distances that would take days on foot. At night, the herd circles near the chum, their bodies a wall of warmth against the black air. Their bells jingle softly as they shift, the sound a lullaby to those inside the tent. Dogs patrol around them, barking at shadows, snapping at wolves that dare approach. Men wake in turns, stepping into the darkness, checking, counting again, their voices calling low songs that reassure both herd and herder alike. Without the reindeer, there is nothing, no boots to step into the snow, no coats to block the wind, no meat for broth, no milk for children, no antlers for tools, no hides for tents. To live in the coldest place on earth is to live in pact with them, to follow their rhythms, to accept their gifts, to treat them with reverence. They are not merely animals, they are partners, companions, lifelines. As dawn sharpens and the herd begins to move again, pouring snow, lifting heads, antlers silhouetted against the pale horizon, you understand why the herders sing. The songs are not only to calm the animals, they are to remind themselves of the truth. Survival here is not human alone. It is human and reindeer, bound together, walking side by side through the frozen white silence of the tundra. Bathing is such a simple act in most places, turning a handle, steam filling the room, warm water spilling endlessly into a tub. In the coldest inhabited land on earth, it is something else entirely. Here, where rivers lie buried under slabs of ice meters thick, where buckets of water must be hacked from frozen stone, where the air itself can kill bare skin in minutes, a shower is not a daily indulgence. It is an event, a ritual, a rare battle against the tundra itself. It begins with fire. Before anyone can dream of washing, mountains of ice must be cut, hauled and melted. Cells groan under their loads, blocks stacked like crystal bricks near the stove. For hours, flames roar as kettles are filled and emptied, until barrels slosh with water that hisses as steam against the bitter air. The tent grows damp, its felt walls sweating faintly, frost dripping from poles as the balance between cold and heat briefly tilts. Already, this is a luxury, this abundance of liquid in a place where every drop is normally rationed like treasure. But washing in open air is impossible. To strip bare in minus 71 degrees would mean frostbite before you could soap your hair. And so, another tent is prepared, a smaller one, pitched beside the chum. Poles are lashed, hides stretched, felt layered thick, a stove carried inside, smoke pipe fitted through the roof. This becomes the bathhouse, the steam bath, the lifeline. Stones are heated on the stove until they glow red, water splashed over them to send thick, hissing vapor into the air. Slowly, the space fills with warmth, thick and heavy, pressing close against skin. Inside, the family undresses quickly, their breath sharp, their hands fumbling with frozen laces and cords. Clothes stiff with frost are hung near the stove, steaming as they thaw, while bare bodies huddle close to the heat. At first it stings, the sudden rush of warmth against skin so used to being swaddled in hides and wool. But then the pores open, the muscles loosen, and relief spreads. Water is ladled into basins, soap softened by fire until it foams. Cloths are dipped, wrung out, pressed against skin. Faces are scrubbed, hair washed, bodies rubbed raw until pink, until clean. Children laugh, splashing, their voices rising in the steam. They rub frost from their lashes, pour water over each other's heads, chase each other around the stove. For them, this is not just cleanliness, it is joy. Adults smile despite themselves, their shoulders easing, their eyes closing as hot water runs down their backs. For a few brief minutes, the cold beyond the walls is forgotten. The tundra is kept at bay, but the ritual cannot last long. Even with the stove roaring, the tent is still surrounded by black frost. The water cools quickly, the steam thins, the air bites again. Towels are rough, hides are wrapped back around bodies, layers pulled on with frantic haste. Already, the children's laughter is muffled again behind scarves, their cheeks vanishing beneath hoods. Already, the air is waiting, ready to claw at wet hair, damp skin, unguarded gaps. The bathhouse grows quiet, stones hiss faintly as they cool, steam fading into thin wisps, water dripping slowly from the stovepipe. The family steps back into the night, steam still rising from their shoulders, their clothes stiffening again with frost. The tent is dismantled soon after, the hides folded, the poles stacked, because nothing can be left to waste in the tundra. Tomorrow the land will swallow it in white silence. And yet, for one night, for 1 hour, the people of Yakutia were clean. They smelled of soap, of smoke, of water coaxed from frozen rivers. Their skin glowed pink, their laughter echoed in steam, their spirits were lifted. A bath here is not simply hygiene, it is rebellion. It is proof that even in a place where air itself tries to kill, people can still wash themselves, still feel fresh, still remember what it means to be human. Laundry in the tundra is not the light, perfumed core that city dwellers imagine. Here in the cold village Oymyakon, or in the nomad tents scattered across Yakutia, washing clothes is a trial of endurance, a battle fought with ice and fire, a duty that leaves hands raw and garments smelling forever of smoke. It begins with water, as everything does. Barrels filled from melted ice slabs, kettles boiled on the stove until steam fogs the tent. A basin is dragged close to the fire, its iron sides hissing as heat touches them, and carefully, cautiously, buckets of water are poured inside. Soap, brittle as stone, is softened near the flames until it yields, its edge melting enough to lather. Even with all this preparation, the water cools frighteningly fast. In a land where air gnaws at heat like a hungry wolf, every second counts. Clothes are stripped from the family, thick with weeks of smoke, grease and sweat. Woolen trousers stiff with frost, mittens crusted with dirt, scarves stiff as boards, shirts so saturated with smoke. They smell more of fire than of fabric. They are dunked into the basin, steaming, the water clouding instantly with grime. Hands plunge in, red from the heat, trembling as they scrub, soap rubbed hard into fibres, cloths beaten against boards. Children help, their small arms hauling lighter garments, their laughter muffled as they splash each other with water that chills as soon as it leaves the basin. One by one, the garments are wrung out, twisted until the water pours back in heavy streams. But the reprieve is short. Within moments the fabric stiffens, edges hardening into frost. Shirts become planks, trousers hang like iron sheets, scarves freeze into coiled whips. They are carried outside, spread across lines that creak under the weight. The air finishes the work, turning each piece into sculpture. Sleeves stretch stiffly into the sky, collars stand upright, trousers remain bent at the knee as though frozen mid-step. In the pale sun, the whole line looks like an army of ghosts standing watch over the camp. But frozen laundry cannot be worn. Once stiffened, it must be thawed again. Carried back inside, draped across chairs and poles near the stove. Slowly under the glow of fire, the ice melts, droplets hissing as they fall into the coals, steam rising in thin curls. The garments soften, sagging, finally returning to something like cloth. They still smell of smoke. Always smoke, for nothing here escapes it. But they are clean enough. They are wearable again. It is exhausting work. Arms ache from scrubbing. Fingers burn from water that shifts from scalding to icy in minutes. The tent fills with steam, damp clinging to hides, frost dripping from the roof as the balance between cold and warmth collapses. Yet it must be done, because dirt and grease weaken cloth, and weakened cloth means gaps for the cold to enter, because children must have scarves soft enough to wrap around faces without cracking, because coats must be supple enough to bend, boots pliable enough to lace, mittens flexible enough to grip an axe. Laundry here is not vanity, it is defense. It is another wall built against the frost, another way of keeping families alive, one more week, one more season. The garments may be patched, may be old, may smell forever of wood smoke, but each time they are scrubbed and thawed and mended, they are reborn as armor. Outside, the laundry still hangs, stiff and frozen, sleeves outstretched, legs rigid, scarves coiled like weapons. In the fading light, they stand like sentries, guardians made of wool and ice. Tomorrow they will be soft again, folded, worn, warmed by the fire, wrapped around living bodies, and the rhythm will continue, wash, freeze, thaw, survive. The tundra seems like a place where joy should freeze, where laughter should shatter into crystals and vanish into the snow. Yet even here, at minus 71 degrees, where every task is heavy with survival, people still find ways to laugh, to play, to forget the gnawing presence of the cold. Fun is not a luxury here. It is a medicine, as essential as broth, as necessary as firewood. Without it, the long nights would swallow the spirit whole. Children are the first to invent joy. Their cheeks raw, their scarves stiff with frost. They tumble into snowdrifts outside the chum, their mittens flailing, their laughter bursting in clouds of breath that drift like smoke. They carve tunnels through the powder, their boots squeaking, their bodies disappearing beneath the white, only to leap upward again, triumphant. When the snow hardens under wind, they slide across it on scraps of wood, their shouts carrying across the silence, startling the reindeer who lift their heads in confusion. Even at 50, 60, 70 below, children will run, will chase each other, will turn the barren expanse into a playground. For a moment the tundra does not look like a place of death, but of boundless possibility. Inside, when the cold presses too heavily, stories are told, the stove glows red, the smoke curls upward, and families gather close. Elders lean forward, their voices low and rhythmic, telling tales of ancestors who wrestled with frost spirits, of hunters who followed wolves into the forest, of shamans who sang to the aurora until it answered. Children's eyes grow wide, their breath fogging in the dim light, their imaginations carrying them far beyond the hides of the tent. Between tales, laughter breaks free, jokes tossed, songs sung, the air vibrating with voices. For a time the cold feels distant, reduced to the faint creak of frost against the felt walls. Games are played with whatever the land allows. Knucklebones carved from reindeer are tossed onto the floor, their clatter mixing with laughter. Wooden tops, carved crudely but spun fiercely, dance across planks near the stove. Small hands grip them, release them, cheer when they wobble and fall. Even mittens, when tossed into the air and caught, become games, competitions of reflex and laughter. In a world where nothing is wasted, play is stitched into survival itself. The young find joy in songs. Voices rise in harmonies, sakar melodies winding through the smoke, the words half ancient, half improvised. Their tones echo across the tundra when sung outdoors, carried by wind, startling birds from frozen branches. Sometimes, when the northern lights ripple above, the songs are lifted toward them, offered as greetings, as thanks, as proof that the people below still live, still endure, still have spirit enough to sing. Even the reindeer are part of the fun. Children climb onto their broad backs, clutching fur with mittened hands, giggling as the animals snort and shuffle. Calves are chased clumsily, laughter following them across the snow. The bond between child and herd is not only practical, it is playful too, forged in games that mirror the deeper pact of survival. And when the day ends, when the fire burns lower, and quilts are pulled close, there is still room for joy. Couples whisper to each other, sharing warmth, sharing jokes muffled beneath hides. Friends gather outside briefly, hoods pulled low, gazing upward at the aurora blazing across the sky. They point, laugh, tease each other about shapes seen in the shifting lights. Even as the cold gnaws at their cheeks, they grin, their teeth flashing white in the green glow. This is the secret of the tundra. Survival is not only work, not only hunger, not only frost. It is also laughter echoing in a frozen night, children sliding across snow, stories told by firelight, voices raised in song to the sky. Fun is not separate from endurance. It is a part of it, woven into the rhythm of life, as vital as water, as necessary as fire. For what good is survival if the spirit grows colder than the land itself? And so they laugh, they sing, they play, and the tundra, vast and merciless, cannot take that from them. The work never truly pauses in the tundra, but there comes a moment in the middle of the day when the family gathers again near the stove, when tools are set down, when mittens are pulled off with stiff fingers, when the endless rhythm of hauling, chopping, feeding, mending stops just long enough to eat. Lunch here is not light, not delicate, not a break in the ordinary sense. It is a refueling, a loading of coal into the furnace of the body, because outside the cold is always burning it away. The tent smells thick of smoke and broth as the pot is lifted from the stove, steam rising into the dim air. The liquid inside is rich, dark, fat shimmering on its surface. Reindeer bones split open to release marrow, bob alongside hunks of meat that fall apart at the touch of a spoon. Potatoes, carrots, a handful of barley treasures hauled across frozen roads in the short summer have been boiled down until they melt on the tongue. The broth hisses as it is ladled into bowls, the steam curling upward, clinging to faces, turning eyelashes wet. Children are given bowls first, their eyes wide, their cheeks raw from the cold that still clings to them even indoors. They sip greedily, blowing on the surface, their voices muffled by the steam. The broth coats their lips with grease, dribbles down their chins, but they smile, licking it away, laughing as they burn their tongues, and are scolded gently. Their laughter is muffled by the stove's hiss, but it fills the space nonetheless, a warmth more powerful than the fire. For adults, lunch is quieter, heavier. They eat in steady spoonfuls, chewing slowly, feeling the strength return to their arms, their legs, their chests. Fat is not indulgence here. It is salvation. Each piece of meat, each mouthful of marrow, each layer of grease pressed into the body is another wall between flesh and frost. They know how quickly the cold strips it away. They have felt their stomachs growl in the middle of the forest, their arms weaken while splitting wood, their knees tremble during the long walk to gather ice. Food is armor, and lunch is another chance to forge it. Beside the broth lies stroganina, thin strips of frozen fish, carved with a sharp knife until they curl like ribbons, pale and glistening in the firelight. They snap in the teeth, cold against the tongue, the flavor sharp and clean. Children crunch them down as though they were sweets, their mittens sticky with grease, their smiles wide. Adults eat more slowly, dipping them into bowls of salt, savoring the oil that lingers on the lips. It is a dish as old as the land itself, and to eat it is to be tied again to generations past. Bread, baked flat over the stove, is torn into hunks and dipped into the broth. It is dense, smoky, blackened in places, but it fills the belly, it swells the chest with heat. Butter, frozen hard in the storage room, is chipped into lumps and spread roughly across it, melting only as it meets the broth. The smell of yeast, of smoke, of fat fills the air, clinging to hair, to hides, to breath. It is not gentle, but it is life. Tea is poured too, black and bitter, sometimes lightened with milk, sometimes sweetened with a lump of sugar if fortune allows. Adults sip it slowly, letting the steam fog their faces, their shoulders loosening as the heat spreads. Children gulp it quickly, their cheeks glowing, their voices rising louder now, their laughter breaking across the room. For a brief moment, the tent feels like any home anywhere. Voices, food, fire, family. The cold outside is forgotten, if only for minutes. But soon the bowls are emptied, the spoons scraped, the last strips of fish eaten. The kettle hisses as it is set back on the stove, the pot lowered again, new logs fed into the fire. The family rises, pulling mittens back on, tightening scarves, lacing boots. The children whine softly, not wanting to leave the warmth, but they are herded toward the door all the same. Lunch is finished. The body is refueled. The fire inside the belly burns bright again. Outside, the tundra waits. Endless, merciless. Work must continue. Wood to chop, herds to tend, sleds to drag, hides to sew. The cold does not rest, and so neither can those who live within it. Still, for a brief hour, there was warmth. For a brief hour, there was laughter. There was broth. There was bread dipped in fat. There was tea that steamed against raw cheeks. And sometimes that is enough. The stove burns steadily, its glow deep and red, while outside the tundra presses with silent weight. Inside the chum, the air is thick with smoke and warmth, and in this pocket of survival, the most important work is done not with axes or sleds, but with needles and hides. It is here that reindeer fur boots torbasa are born, the armor of the feet, the line between life and frostbite. The work begins with the hides. They are spread across the floor, stiff at first, heavy with the memory of the animal that gave them. The hair is thick, layered in hollow strands that trap warmth, proof of evolution shaped by centuries in the cold. Women run their hands across them, feeling for flaws, cuts, thin patches. Each hide must be chosen carefully. A weak patch means a boot that will crack, a seam that will fail, toes lost to frost. In this land, mistakes are measured in flesh. The hides are scraped clean with knives stretched, softened by smoke. The smell fills the tent, sharp, pungent, earthy. It seeps into the walls, the clothes, the hair of everyone inside. Children wrinkle their noses at it, but they will grow to love it, to recognize it as the smell of survival. Once prepared, the hides are cut into panels, each piece measured by memory, by tradition, by a craft passed down through generations. No patterns are drawn. The women know the shapes by hand, by instinct, the way others know songs or prayers. Needles carved from bone pierce the panels, sinew or reindeer tendon drawn through in careful stitches. The thread is strong, resistant, binding hide, to hide with a grip that no cold can undo. The women work slowly, patiently, their fingers clumsy in mittens but sure. They murmur to each other, voices low, their words mingling with the crackle of the stove. Outside the herd shifts, bells jingling faintly. Inside, the boots take form. The soles are thick, layered, padded with felt. They are built to bear the weight of miles, of frozen rivers, of endless snow. The uppers rise high, reaching the calves, laced tight with cords, sealed against drifting ice. Every seam is double-stitched, every gap sealed, every edge folded to trap warmth. Sometimes the boots are decorated, patterns stitched in contrasting fur, lines of color cut from different hides. Even here, even in the harshest place, beauty is not forgotten. Decoration is not luxury. It is pride, proof that the people endure with spirit as well as body. Children watch, their eyes wide, their hands eager to help. They are given scraps to practice on, their stitches uneven, their needles clumsy, but they are learning. They must learn. One day they will sew boots for their own children, and the line of survival will continue unbroken. A grandmother corrects a stitch, her hands trembling with age, but still she guides the tendon through. Still she binds hide to hide. The skill does not die, even when hands grow weak. When the boots are finished, they are held up to the firelight. their fur glistening, their seams tight. They are more than footwear. They are fortresses, they are promises. They are the difference between toes and stumps, between walking and crawling, between returning home and being buried in the snow. A child tries them on, stomps across the floor, grins as the fur swallows their legs. The family laughs, the sound warm, echoing against hides. For a moment, even the cold beyond the tent is forgotten. Outside, the tundra waits, endless and merciless. But inside, a pair of boots has been born, and with them, another step into survival. The herd stands close in the snow, steam rising from their bodies, bells jingling faintly in the stillness. One animal has been chosen today. It is not a decision made lightly, not a casual act of hunger. To the nomads of the tundra, the reindeer is life itself, provider of milk, hide, antlers, sinew, meat, and bone. To take one is to give thanks, to whisper prayers, to honor the bond that stretches back through centuries. But the family must eat, the children must grow, the stove must be fed, not only with wood, but with flesh, and so the butchering begins. The reindeer is led close to the tent, its breath puffing white in the black air, its hooves crunching the brittle snow. A man strokes its neck, murmuring softly, his mittened hand pressed against the thick fur. He does not raise his voice. He does not shout. The animal stands calm, its dark eyes reflecting the pale sun, trusting as it has always trusted. The knife flashes quickly, mercifully, the life leaving it in a moment. The snow darkens beneath it, steaming in the cold. The man bows his head briefly, lips moving in words not meant for others, but for the land itself, for the spirit of the reindeer, for the balance that must always be kept. Then the work begins. The carcass is laid across wooden planks, the hide cut open, peeled back with slow, careful pulls. Steam rises, a cloud that mingles with the breath of those working, clinging to fur, to clothes, to hair. The hide is spread out, scraped clean, set aside to be softened, stitched, turned into boots, mittens, coats, even the very walls of the chum. The meat is carved in thick slabs, red and gleaming, piled into bowls, ready for boiling, drying, freezing. Nothing is wasted. Nothing can be. Children stand nearby, their eyes wide, their voices hushed. They watch as marrow bones are split with axes, the pale core scooped out, rich and fatty, eaten raw as it is pulled free. Elders chew it slowly, savoring its warmth, handing smaller pieces to children who bite eagerly, their faces smeared, their smiles bright. For them this is not gruesome. It is ordinary. It is the rhythm of survival. Fat is set aside, melted down, stored in skins, later to be spread on bread or stirred into porridge. Organs are washed, boiled, seasoned with salt if there is any left, eaten quickly while still steaming. Blood, fresh and hot, is caught in bowls, stirred into sausage casings that will soon bubble in pots. Even the stomach is cleaned, dried, turned into a container for milk or soup. The antlers are cut away, later to be carved into tools, handles, hooks, decorations. The tendons are pulled, stretched, dried, turned into thread stronger than any cord. By the end, the reindeer is gone, yet it is everywhere. On feet, in hands, in bellies, in the walls. Its life continues, folded into the lives of the family, carried in their steps, in their warmth, in their laughter by the fire. Outside, dogs wait patiently, their eyes gleaming, their bodies stiff with frost. Scraps are thrown to them, and they snap them up quickly, tails thumping, their breath streaming white. They too must endure, and they too are fed. The snow is washed clean by the cold, the steam fades, the carcass vanishes piece by piece until only faint stains remain. The herd shifts in the distance, their bells chiming faintly, their heads bent back to the snow. The work is done, the balance restored. A reindeer has been taken, but the family will live. Inside the tent, pots bubble, the smell of meat, rich and heavy, fat glistening on the surface. Children huddle close, their bowls steaming, their eyes bright. Adults chew slowly, their faces thoughtful, silent. They know the cost of what they eat. They know the gift they have been given. In the tundra, at 71 degrees below zero, nothing comes without weight. Every life feeds another. Every act of survival carries a shadow. But the people do not flinch. They do not look away. They honor, they work, they share, and in that they endure. The light outside fades quickly, the pale sun slipping behind the horizon, the tundra sinking once again into its long night. The cold thickens, pressing harder against the felt walls of the chum, creeping through seams, frosting the poles. But inside, the stove glows fiercely, its belly stuffed with fresh logs, the iron hissing with heat. And around it the family prepares dinner, the last defense against the dark. The women knead dough on a wooden board dusted with flour, carried across the frozen land months ago, stored carefully, rationed with discipline. The dough is dense, heavy, worked with strong hands until it yields pliant and warm beneath their fingers. Children watch eagerly, their cheeks flushed from the heat of the stove, their eyes following each fold, each press. The smell is faint at first, yeasty and sour, but soon it fills the tent with promise. The dough is shaped into rounds, flattened, set on a blackened iron pan above the fire. The surface blisters, blackens, cracks, smoke curls upward, mingling with the smell of bread. This is no soft loaf with golden crust. It is flat, dense, tough, but in this land it is a miracle all the same. Nearby, the meat is prepared. Thick slabs of reindeer, carved fresh from today's butchering, sizzle as they are dropped into iron pots. Fat hisses, flames leap. The smell sharp and rich. Bones are thrown in too, marrow leaking into the broth, turning the liquid golden and thick. Onions, rare treasures, are chopped and added, their sweetness rising through the smoke. A handful of potatoes, half withered but still strong, are dropped into the pot, splitting in the heat, softening into flesh. The stew thickens, bubbling, sending up clouds of steam that cling to the hides above, dripping back down in cold rivulets. The children laugh as they help, their hands clumsy, their mittens discarded by the fire. They carry chunks of wood, stir the pot with spoons too big for them, tear scraps of dough to nibble when no one is watching. Their faces shine in the glow, their lashes wet from steam, their voices rising above the crackle of fire. For them, dinner is not just food. It is an event, a joy, a moment when hunger is replaced with plenty. When at last the bread is finished, when the stew is ladled into bowls, the family gathers close around the stove. Quilts are spread beneath them, furs piled high, the glow of the fire painting every face red and gold. Bowls are passed hand to hand, steam rising, spoons clinking against enamel. The bread is torn into pieces, dipped into broth, softened, swallowed. The stew is heavy, rich, fat coating the lips, meat falling apart on the tongue. Children slurp greedily, broth dripping down their chins, laughter echoing in the smoky air. Adults eat slower, chewing with reverence, their shoulders easing as the warmth spreads through their bellies. Outside, the tundra moans faintly, trees splitting in the forest, frost cracking across the snow. The reindeer shift, their bells jingling softly. Dogs bark once, then curl back into themselves. The night presses harder, the cold grows deeper. The silence thickens, but inside there is only warmth. Inside there is only the glow of the stove, the laughter of children, the taste of bread dipped in broth, the comfort of meat shared among family. When the bowls are empty, when the bread is gone, when the last scraps have been given to the dogs, the family leans back, satisfied. Their bellies are full, their spirits strong. The stove is fed again, the flames roar higher, the quilts are pulled close. The night may stretch long and merciless, but for now it cannot touch them. For now they have eaten, they have laughed, they have lived. Dinner in the tundra is not just nourishment, it is triumph. It is proof that even here in the coldest land on earth, people do not simply endure. They gather, they share, they feast. The tundra presses against the walls, but inside the chum life burns brighter than frost.